The monitor flatlined with a long, piercing tone, and the room erupted into motion. "Clear!" Dr. Ade shouted, pressing the paddles to Chief Bassey's chest. The old man's body jolted once, then fell still again. Again, a nurse cried. "Charging clear." The shock hit. Nothing. Pulse? Still gone. "Come on, sir, don't do this," Dr. Ade muttered, sweat beading down his temple. Outside the glass doors, two families stood on opposite sides of the corridor like enemies forced into the same battlefield. 30 years of silence. 30 years of bitterness. 30 years of hatred that had turned blood into strangers. "Why are they here?" Mrs. Bassey hissed, her eyes locked on the Okafors across the hall. Mr. Okafor didn't look away. "We came to see him. You lost that right years ago." "Enough," a younger voice cut in. Amara Bassey stepped forward, her hands shaking. "This isn't the time." From the other side, Daniel Okafor met her eyes. There was history there, unspoken, complicated. "She's right," he said quietly. Inside the room, the monitor suddenly flickered. Wait, a nurse shouted. "We have something." A weak, uneven rhythm appeared. "Pulse is back." Dr. Ade exhaled sharply. "Stabilize him. Carefully." Moments later, the doors opened. "Only immediate family," the doctor said. Silence. Then, unexpectedly, the old man's weak voice came from inside. "Let them in." Everyone froze. "He said all of them," the nurse clarified. Reluctantly, the two families stepped into the same room for the first time in 3 decades. Chief Bassey lay there, pale but conscious, his eyes searching. When they landed on Mr. Okafor, something like regret flickered. "You came," he whispered. "I didn't come for you," Mr. Okafor replied, his voice cold. "I came for closure." The old man gave a faint, painful smile. "Closure, yes. That's why you're all here." Mrs. Bassey stepped closer. "You shouldn't be talking. You need rest." "No," he rasped. "I've rested long enough, 30 years too long." The room fell still. "You've all been living a lie," he said, each word heavy. "A lie I allowed to grow." "What are you talking about?" Mr. Okafor snapped. Chief Bassey's eyes closed briefly, as if gathering strength. "The truth about that night, it wasn't what you think." A ripple of tension moved through the room. Amara's heart pounded. "What night?" No one answered her. They all knew. 30 years ago. The night everything fell apart. If you're already feeling the tension building, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because this story is about to take a turn no one saw coming. Back then, the Basseys and the Okafors were inseparable. Neighbors who became family. Business partners who trusted each other without question. Their children grew up together, shared meals, celebrated every milestone side by side. "You're practically my brother," Chief Bassey had once told Mr. Okafor, raising a glass during a lively evening gathering. "And you're the only man I trust with everything I have," Mr. Okafor had replied with a grin. Their wives laughed together in the kitchen, their children ran through the house like it belonged to all of them. Daniel and Amara, barely teenagers then, had been inseparable. "Race you to the gate," Amara had shouted. "You're going to lose," Daniel teased, sprinting ahead. "You cheated. You're just slow." Their laughter echoed through the compound, carefree and pure. No one could have imagined how quickly it would all crumble. It started with a deal. A big one. "This contract will change everything," Chief Bassey had said, spreading documents across the table. Mr. Okafor nodded. "We've worked too hard to let this slip." But the night the deal was finalized, everything went wrong. A fire broke out at the warehouse. By the time anyone arrived, it was already too late. Flames consumed everything. Goods worth millions reduced to ashes. And then came the accusation. "It was sabotage," one of the workers said. "Someone set that fire." Suspicion spread like poison. Evidence pointed in one direction. Your signature authorized the transfer, Chief Bassey had said, his voice shaking with anger as he held up the documents. That's impossible, Mr. Okafor replied, stunned. I didn't sign anything. It's right here. It's forged. You expect me to believe that? I'm telling you the truth. But the truth didn't matter anymore. Not when everything was gone. Not when betrayal felt more real than trust. You destroyed everything we built, Chief Bassey had said, his voice breaking. I didn't do this, Mr. Okafor insisted. Then who did? There was no answer. Only silence. And that silence became the beginning of 30 years of hate. From today, Chief Bassey said, his face hardening, we are no longer family. Mr. Okafor clenched his fists. We never were. And just like that, everything ended. Back in the hospital room, the weight of those words still lingered decades later. Amara looked between the two men. So, all this time, you never spoke again? No, her mother said sharply. There was nothing left to say. But there is now, Daniel murmured. All eyes turned to Chief Bassey. He swallowed, his breathing uneven. That night, I made a decision, one that cost us everything. What decision? Mr. Okafor demanded. The old man's gaze shifted, filled with something that looked dangerously close to guilt. I chose to believe a lie. The room went still. And something in the air began to crack. Chief Bassey's voice trembled, weak but steady, as he continued. I didn't verify the papers. I didn't ask questions. I saw the fire, the destruction, and I blamed your family, Okafor. I let anger guide me, and in doing so, I destroyed what we had. Mr. Okafor's face tightened, disbelief flickering across his features. You blamed us? Without proof? 30 years of mistrust, because of your pride? I was afraid, the old man admitted, a quiver in his tone. Afraid of the truth, afraid of admitting that someone else caused the fire. Someone neither of us expected. Amara's hands shook. Someone else? Yes, Chief Bassey whispered. It was never you. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Then who? The room's silence grew heavier, filled only by the rhythmic beeping of the monitor. The nurses shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension, while the younger generation stared wide-eyed at the elders, realizing that decades of anger had been misplaced. Chief Bassey coughed and managed a faint smile. It was a trusted worker, someone I thought loyal, who envied both of us. He forged the papers, set the fire, and walked away unnoticed. And I let my anger settle on you, Okafor. A stunned hush fell over the room. Mrs. Bassey's hand flew to her mouth. All these years, we've hated them, and it wasn't even their fault? Mr. Okafor shook his head slowly, grief and disbelief mixing. 30 years of loss, of family torn apart, wasted. Amara stepped forward, gripping Daniel's hand. We can't change the past, but maybe we can do something now. The older men looked at each other. For the first time in decades, they seemed vulnerable, human. No anger, no pride, just the weight of regret. Daniel cleared his throat. Maybe it's time to stop letting that past define us. We're still alive. We still have a chance to rebuild, at least from here. Mrs. Bassey's lips quivered. Rebuild, after everything? Yes, Amara said softly, because hating each other for 30 years has only hurt us all. Let's end it here. Chief Bassey's frail hand reached for Mr. Okafor's. Hesitation hung in the air for a heartbeat, as if time itself paused to witness this fragile bridge being built. Slowly, Mr. Okafor's hand met his. It was a small gesture, but it carried a weight heavier than any words could convey. I forgive you, Chief Bassey whispered. For believing in the wrong thing. For letting anger blind me. And I forgive you, Mr. Okafor said, his voice breaking. For letting silence grow instead of asking questions. The younger generation exhaled together, a tension released from their bones without even realizing it. Amara's eyes glistened as she looked around the room. We can't undo the past, but we can be better. Together. Chief Bassey nodded faintly. Yes, together. Daniel squeezed her hand. Then let's start now. Outside the hospital room, the rain tapped gently against the glass. The world had not changed, yet somehow, it felt different. Hope flickered in small, cautious bursts, as if reborn from the ashes of long-held anger. Weeks passed. Slowly, cautiously, both families began to reconnect. At first, it was awkward, half-finished conversations, uncertain glances, tentative visits. But the ice continued to melt. "Remember when we used to celebrate birthdays together?" Mrs. Bassey asked one evening, sitting across from Mrs. Okafor. Their hands hovered over cups of tea, hesitant, until Mrs. Okafor's hand covered hers. "I've missed that. More than I realized." The children, once wary and mistrustful of each other, began to talk again. Daniel and Amara orchestrated small gatherings, shared meals, storytelling nights, laughter that had been absent for decades. Slowly, walls built over 30 years crumbled. One night, around a fire pit in Chief Bassey's backyard, the elders watched their grandchildren chase each other, laughing without inhibition. Chief Bassey turned to Mr. Okafor, his eyes watery. "I never thought I'd see this, us together again." Mr. Okafor nodded. "Neither did I. But here we are. It's never too late." Amara caught his gaze. "Sometimes," she said softly, "it takes one moment of truth to heal generations." Chief Bassey reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn notebook. "I kept this all these years," he admitted. "It's the worker's confession. I never wanted it to see the light because I was too ashamed. But it's time you knew the full truth." He handed it over to Mr. Okafor. Mr. Okafor opened it, and the words on the yellowed pages confirmed what had long been suspected but never proven. Forgiveness no longer had to be forced, it could flow freely, untainted by doubt. I can't believe it," Mr. Okafor whispered, almost laughing through tears. "We've carried this weight for so long, and it was never ours." Chief Bassey shook his head. "I know. And now we can finally be what we should have been." From that day forward, the two families began to operate as one. They shared business ventures, celebrated festivals together, and supported each other through illness and joy. Every once in a while, they would glance at each other and smile knowingly, the ghosts of the past replaced with lessons learned and bonds rekindled. One evening, as the sun set in a warm golden haze, Amara stood beside Daniel, watching the families laugh over a shared meal. "Who would have thought," she mused, "that 30 years of hate could lead to something this beautiful?" Daniel smiled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "It's never too late to heal. And sometimes, it takes decades to appreciate what we almost lost." Chief Bassey, sitting nearby, lifted his cup. "To forgiveness. To truth. To family." Mr. Okafor echoed the toast. "To family." As laughter and conversation spilled into the warm evening air, a sense of peace settled over both households. 30 years of bitterness had finally been transformed into understanding. Old wounds were acknowledged, scars gently healed, and the two families, once torn apart, were reborn as one. If you're moved by this story of reconciliation and the power of truth, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to see more stories that touch the heart. Because sometimes, forgiveness is the greatest gift we can give and receive. Months passed, and the reunion wasn't just ceremonial, it became real life. The children of both families, who once regarded each other warily, now studied together, played together, and shared dreams without hesitation. Daniel and Amara spearheaded these small gatherings, encouraging shared meals, storytelling evenings, and games that reminded everyone of the bond that had once existed. Slowly, the tension that had dominated every room for 30 years began to dissolve, replaced by laughter that had long been absent. One afternoon, the families gathered in Chief Bassey's backyard, the air warm with spring's gentle breeze. Mr. Okafor had brought his famous stew, and the rich aroma mingled with the sound of children running barefoot across the lawn. Chief Bassey watched quietly, his hands clasped in his lap, tears brimming in his eyes. "I never thought I'd see this again," he murmured to Mr. Okafor, his voice trembling with emotion. "I've lived with so much regret. 30 years, gone in an instant." Mr. Okafor placed a hand on his shoulder. "We've wasted too much time. But now, we have a chance to move forward. That's what matters." Amara ran up to them, breathless and beaming. "Come see." The kids are making up our old family games. They even invented a race like we used to have. Daniel followed her lead, smiling at the sight of children chasing each other, their laughter echoing through the yard. It's beautiful, he said quietly. We almost let hatred steal this from us forever. Mrs. Bassey and Mrs. Okafor sat on a bench nearby, exchanging smiles and tentative conversations that grew easier with each word. I've missed this, Mrs. Bassey admitted softly. The warmth, the connection, it's like we've reclaimed something lost. Mrs. Okafor nodded, her hand brushing lightly over Mrs. Bassey's. We've carried so much pain, she said, but I think it's finally time we let it go completely. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of gold and rose, casting a warm glow over the gathering. The elders shared stories of the past, not the bitter memories of betrayal and suspicion, but the joyful moments they had once cherished together. Each story carried a subtle lesson, a reminder of how fragile trust could be and how precious reconciliation was. One evening, Chief Bassey called both families together. He produced an old, dust-covered box he had kept hidden for decades. Inside were photographs, letters, and documents, the remnants of their shared history before the fire. I've kept this safe all these years, he said, not because I wanted to dwell on the past, but because I hoped one day we could look at it together, honestly, and without anger. The families leaned in as he passed around the fragile papers. There were photos of celebrations, trips, and birthday parties, snapshots of a unity long forgotten. There were letters exchanged between the elders, reminders of promises made and friendships forged. And then, at the very bottom of the box, the confession letter of the worker responsible for the fire, the truth that had been buried for 30 years. Mr. Okafor's hands shook as he read it aloud. He admits, it was never us. He wanted to destroy both families because of envy and greed. Everything we lost, it wasn't our fault. A silence settled over the group, heavy but cleansing. Chief Bassey exhaled, a weight lifting from his chest. I blamed wrongly, and for that, I am deeply sorry. We've carried this pain for too long. And I for my part, Mr. Okafor added, allowed pride and anger to harden my heart. But that ends now. Amara looked around, her eyes shining with unshed tears. We've spent 30 years apart, but maybe we can spend the rest of our lives together, making up for lost time. The families smiled at one another, a warmth growing where frost had ruled for decades. They began planning shared holidays, celebrations, and even joint ventures, small steps that reinforced their unity. Children painted murals together on blank walls of Chief Bassey's home, laughter spilling like sunlight into every corner. One evening, Daniel and Amara stood apart from the group, watching the younger generation play. It's incredible, isn't it? She said softly. All the pain, and now this. Daniel nodded, pulling her close. Sometimes, it takes decades to realize what matters. Sometimes, forgiveness is the bridge we didn't know we could build. Chief Bassey and Mr. Okafor approached, walking side by side in a way that seemed natural, as if the years of division had never existed. I still can't believe we let this go for so long, Chief Bassey murmured. Neither can I, Mr. Okafor replied. But what's important is that we see the truth now. We rebuild. We heal. Together. As night fell, the families gathered around a fire pit. Stories were shared, laughter rang out, and music played softly in the background. Chief Bassey raised a glass. To truth, forgiveness, and family. Mr. Okafor lifted his cup in unison. To family. The younger generation followed, voices full and bright, to family. Amara smiled at Daniel. 30 years of hate, all gone. Not gone, Daniel replied. Transformed. Into something stronger, something real. Chief Bassey watched the flames flicker, a sense of peace settling over him. We were given a second chance, he whispered, and we didn't squander it. That's worth everything. The camera of memory might have captured a simple scene, families gathered, smiles and laughter, a shared meal, a fire casting a golden glow. But the story behind it, the 30 years of bitterness, the pain, the silence, and the eventual reconciliation, was far more powerful than any image. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the unity continued to strengthen. Business deals were shared openly. Celebrations were never again split between the families. Children grew up with a sense of security and belonging, unaware of the deep wounds their parents had carried. They knew only warmth, laughter, and the stories of courage, honesty, and forgiveness that had finally brought two families back together. One morning, Chief Bassey called the younger generation to his side. "Remember this moment," he said, voice soft but firm. "Never let pride, anger, or fear grow unchecked. Speak the truth, forgive mistakes, and treasure the people around you. This is your inheritance, not wealth or property, but trust and love." Daniel and Amara held hands, eyes glistening. "We will," they promised. Chief Bassey looked across at Mr. Okafor, and they shared a nod, a silent agreement that past grievances were now lessons, not chains. The sun rose over the compound, casting long shadows over the lawn, illuminating laughter, tears, and embraces. The families were no longer two, but one, reborn, resilient, and bound not by grudges but by shared history and the wisdom that comes from facing pain, accepting truth, and choosing forgiveness. If this story reminds you of the power of reconciliation and the strength of truth, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe. Because some lessons are timeless, forgiveness heals, truth liberates, and family, no matter the trials, is worth everything. As seasons changed, the bond between the two families only deepened. Holidays were celebrated together, from birthdays to religious festivals, each gathering a reminder of what had been lost and then regained. Children ran through the compound freely, calling each other cousins and siblings without hesitation, their laughter bridging the gap that 30 years of silence had carved. Even the elders, who had once stood rigid in their pride, now shared quiet jokes and memories that only those who had endured long pain could appreciate. One evening, under a soft canopy of stars, Chief Bassey and Mr. Okafor sat together on the porch, listening to the hum of life around them. "I never imagined," Chief Bassey said, his voice low, "that we'd make it this far. That we'd actually see the families united again." Mr. Okafor nodded, his eyes reflecting the golden lights of the house. "It's a miracle of sorts, isn't it? 30 years of misunderstandings, and here we are, proving that forgiveness can change everything." Amara and Daniel joined them, carrying blankets for warmth. "It's more than a miracle," Daniel said softly. "It's choice. Every day, we choose to let go, to rebuild, to love instead of resent." A young boy from the Okafor side ran past, tripping over his cousin's foot. Both tumbled, then laughed, their voices carrying across the yard. Amara chuckled, shaking her head. They'll never know how close they came to missing out on this entire life of happiness. Mrs. Bassey and Mrs. Okafor brought out food, plates balanced carefully as they called the children in. The elders joined them, and together, they shared stories, jokes, and quiet reflections. There was a rhythm to their interactions now, familiar, warm, and effortless, a stark contrast to the tense, silent dinners of decades past. "Do you remember the fire?" Mrs. Okafor asked, her voice hesitant but gentle. "The night that started it all?" A hush fell over the table. Chief Bassey's eyes lingered on the glowing embers of the fire pit. "Yes," he admitted. "I remember everything. And I remember the cost of letting anger rule." Mr. Okafor reached across, placing a hand on his old friend's arm. "We can't change the past, but we can honor it by how we live now. And we've done that. Every day since the truth came out, we've chosen to be family again." Amara raised her glass of juice in a small toast. "To family," she said brightly, "to forgiveness, to second chances, and to the love that binds us." All voices echoed in agreement. "To family." The night deepened, stars sparkling like tiny witnesses to the reunion. Laughter carried into the darkness, a symphony of hearts finally free from decades of resentment. Children lay on blankets, staring up at the sky, imagining futures full of opportunity, trust, and unity. They had no concept of the wounds that had come before, only the healing that had emerged. Weeks turned into months, and the families began to cement their unity in tangible ways. Joint projects, celebrations, and even small business ventures became symbols of their renewed trust. Elderly neighbors and friends remarked on the remarkable change, noting how the house once divided by pride and silence now pulsed with life, energy, and joy. One day, Chief Bassey called everyone together to plant a tree in the yard, a symbol of growth, resilience, and the new life they had built together. Each family member took turns planting a branch, watering it carefully, and placing their hands in the soil. The act was simple, yet profoundly symbolic, a living testament to the lessons learned, the pain endured, and the bonds renewed. Amara stood beside Daniel, watching the younger children dig small holes for saplings. "It's incredible," she whispered. All the bitterness, all the pain, it led to something stronger than we could have imagined. Daniel smiled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Sometimes the longest winters bring the most vibrant springs. We've learned that truth and forgiveness grow roots no anger can destroy. Chief Bassey and Mr. Okafor, standing shoulder to shoulder, surveyed the yard. We may be old, Chief Bassey said softly, but we've created something that will outlive us. A family renewed, whole again. And it's not just about us, Mr. Okafor added. It's about the generations that come after. They will grow knowing love, trust, and the power of reconciliation. That's the legacy of today. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky with hues of amber and rose, both families gathered one final time around the fire pit. They shared stories, laughed, and recounted the lessons of their journey. And when the night drew to a close, they didn't part with hesitation or lingering anger. They left together, hearts light, spirits lifted, and a bond that would never again be broken. If this story touched you, remember the power of forgiveness and the truth's ability to heal. Like this video, leave a comment about what forgiveness means to you, and subscribe to follow more stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us all why family, whether by blood or choice, is worth everything.